My name is Ava Reynolds. I'm 26 years old, a Harvard-educated attorney, and the daughter of Victor Reynolds, the man who built Reynolds and Stone, one of the most powerful law firms in Dallas. From the outside, my life looks perfect. Wealth. Influence. A legacy waiting to be inherited. But standing in my father's office that afternoon, staring across his massive mahogany desk, I realized none of that was ever truly meant for me. "You can't be serious, Dad," I said, my voice trembling despite every effort to keep it steady. My father leaned back in his leather chair, calm and composed as always. He exhaled slowly, like this conversation was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "This is not up for discussion, Ava," he said, placing his cigar into the ashtray with deliberate finality. My fists clenched at my sides. I refused to back down. "So that's it," I snapped. "You'd rather hand everything over to Ethan, someone who doesn't even care, than let me prove myself. All because I'm a woman." He didn't flinch. "This firm is for your brother to manage," Victor said firmly. "You've done well with your education. You'll make a fine wife one day. But this is not your place." The words landed like a slap. I had spent my entire life preparing for this moment. Top of my class. Debate champion. Graduated with honors. Sleepless nights poring over case law. Also, I could follow in his footsteps. And yet, none of it mattered. Standing there, surrounded by the smell of leather and cigar smoke, my world shifted. "Ethan doesn't care about this firm," I said, meeting his gaze. "He's reckless. He barely scraped through community college. He has no idea how to run a business, and you know that." My father sighed, rubbing his temple like I was the problem. "He'll learn," he said. "He's my son. It's his birthright to take over Reynolds and Stone. And you," his voice softened just slightly. "You have other options. A future without this stress. I'm protecting you." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Protecting me?" I shook my head. "You're holding me back. I've earned this. I've worked harder than anyone, including Ethan, and you know it. But you won't even give me a chance because you're too stuck in your ways to see what I'm capable of." His expression hardened. "That's enough, Ava. We're done here." I stormed out of his office, my heels echoing through the marble halls of our family estate. My mother was in the parlor, quietly arranging flowers. She looked up, concern flickering across her tired eyes. "Ava," she said softly. "What happened?" "He won't let me work at the firm," I said, my voice breaking. "He's handing everything to Ethan. And he expects me to just accept it." She sighed, hands stealing over the vase. "Your father, he has his ways," she said carefully. "Maybe it's best not to push him." I stared at her, stunned. "Best not to push him," I repeated. "He's throwing away everything I've worked for because I'm a woman." She lowered her gaze. Years of quiet submission etched into her face. "I just don't want to see you hurt," she whispered. "Sometimes it's easier to let things be." That's when it hit me. I was on my own. That night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, my father's words replayed over and over. All those sacrifices. All that ambition. Reduced to one expectation: marry well and stay out of the way. And for the first time in my life, I realized something terrifying and freeing at the same time. If I stayed, nothing would ever change. The next morning, I was halfway through packing my suitcase when the door creaked open. My mother, Lydia Reynolds, stood there, pale and uncertain. "Ava, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling with worry. Before I could answer, my father appeared behind her, his brows furrowed. "What's all this?" he demanded, stepping into the room. "Where do you think you're going?" Just then, my brother Ethan lounged against the doorframe in his robe, grinning as if the world were his playground. "Packing for a vacation, sis?" he asked casually. I snapped the suitcase shut and turned to face them, my shoulders squared. "I'm leaving," I said firmly. "Since I'm not welcome at the firm, and apparently don't fit into this family's plan, I'm going to find a place where I do belong." My father's face darkened. My mother clutched her pearls, her eyes glistening. "Ava," Lydia whispered softly. "Don't do this, we can talk it out." I shook my head. "There's nothing to talk about. You've made your priorities clear." Victor's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, his tone cold. "Don't be ridiculous, Ava. This is your home. Where else would you go?" "To make a point," I said, my voice steady. "A point that I'm worth more than being pushed aside for someone who hasn't earned a thing. You made it clear last night that I have no place in your firm, so I will find a firm that values me, my skills, my drive." Ethan scoffed, shaking his head. "You're making a big deal out of nothing, Ava. You're throwing a tantrum just because Dad isn't handing you the keys to the kingdom." "This isn't a tantrum, Ethan," I snapped. "It's me taking control of my life, something you've never had to do because everything's been handed to you." My father raised a hand, silencing us both. "Enough," he said sternly. "You're not leaving. You belong here, with your family." I picked up my suitcase, determination in every step. "No, Dad. I belong somewhere I'm valued. And clearly, that's not here." I walked past them, the suitcase rolling behind me. My mother's voice trembled, calling out softly, "Ava, please don't go. We can figure this out as a family." I stopped at the base of the grand staircase and turned to her. "Mom. I love you. But I can't keep pretending things will change. If I stay, they won't." My father watched silently from above, his expression unreadable. Ethan leaned against the banister, smirking, clearly unconcerned. I opened the front door and turned back one last time. "When you're ready to treat me like more than just a daughter who needs to marry well, you know where to find me." Then I stepped into the crisp morning air and closed the door behind me. For the first time, I felt truly free. Within days, I secured an interview at one of Dallas' most respected law firms. They didn't care about the Reynolds name, only about my credentials, my drive, and my ambition. When I walked in, I wasn't Ava Reynolds, Victor Reynolds' daughter. I was Ava Reynolds, Harvard graduate and determined attorney. By the end of the week, I was offered a position. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere for what I could do, not for who I was. The work was challenging, but it energized me. For the first time, my success depended entirely on me, no favoritism, no legacy, no expectations from a father who thought I wasn't enough. My new boss, a sharp and modern man named Daniel Harper, immediately recognized my talent. He valued my insight, pushed me to take on high-profile cases, and treated me as an equal. Within months, I was handling cases that would have overwhelmed most associates. Every victory built my confidence. I wasn't just a lawyer anymore, I was a force in my own right. But the nights were harder. Coming home to an empty apartment, I felt the absence of my mother's quiet support, and even the chaotic presence of Ethan, frustrating as it was, seemed comforting. Yet the deepest sting was knowing my father had dismissed me so easily. Months of hard work, sleepless nights, and ambition all disregarded. Still, I thrived. Every high-stakes case was an opportunity to prove myself, to show the world, and most importantly, myself, that I was more than anyone had ever given me credit for. And deep down, I knew the day would come when I'd have a chance to confront my family, on my terms, as the attorney I had fought to become. A few weeks into my new role at Harper & Co., I was already making a name for myself. Cases that seemed impossible on paper were suddenly within reach because of the preparation, focus, and determination I brought to every argument. Daniel Harper, my boss, had begun assigning me to more high-profile clients, a clear sign he trusted my abilities. Then one morning, Daniel called me into his office. "Ava," he said, motioning for me to sit, his tone serious but not unkind. "We have a case coming up, and I want you on it. It's complicated, and personal." I raised an eyebrow. "Personal?" He nodded. "Our client is suing a major firm. Reynolds and Associates." His gaze met mine carefully. "Your father's firm." My stomach dropped. I anticipated professional challenges, but this was a different level. Facing my own father in court. Ava Reynolds versus Victor Reynolds. "You want me to represent someone suing my father's firm?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes," Daniel said firmly. "It's high stakes, and I believe you're the right person for the job. You know how that firm operates, and your experience is unmatched. I trust you can handle this." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Every fiber of my being wanted to fight for justice, but this would be a direct confrontation with the man who had dismissed me, the man who had handed everything to Ethan, my brother. I took a deep breath. "I need to think about it," I said slowly. "Take the night if you need it," Daniel replied. "But this is the kind of case that can define your career. If you want to prove yourself on your own terms, this is the moment." That night, I lay in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the implications. Taking the case would mean going head-to-head with my father and Ethan. It would mean walking into a courtroom where my family's pride, legacy, and my own past would all collide. But it also meant asserting my independence, showing the world that I was more than a daughter who had been dismissed. The next morning, I met Daniel in his office. "I'll take the case," I said, my voice calm but resolute. "Let's get to work." Preparation began immediately. Every document, contract, and piece of evidence I could find on Reynolds and Associates was examined meticulously. I rehearsed arguments, anticipated counterpoints, and mentally prepared myself for the day I would face my father and Ethan in court. Finally, the day of the first litigation hearing arrived. The tension in the air was palpable as I stepped into the courthouse. My heels clicked confidently against the polished floors, and my briefcase felt like an extension of my resolve. As I approached the front, my eyes met my father's. Victor Reynolds sat across the table, his expression unreadable, but the sharpness in his gaze betrayed a flicker of surprise. Ethan's smug smirk faltered for a brief second before he masked it with false confidence. I set my briefcase down, my posture poised and unshakable. In that moment, I wasn't Ava Reynolds, the daughter, or the sister. I was Ava Reynolds, attorney for the plaintiff, and I was prepared to win. The hearing began, and I slipped into my role seamlessly. Each motion, each argument, every piece of evidence presented was delivered with precision. My voice was calm, my tone measured. I wasn't performing for my father, and I wasn't intimidated by Ethan's bravado. As the session progressed, it became increasingly clear that Ethan was unprepared. Every point he raised crumbled under my responses. My father attempted to intervene, subtly guiding him, but even his presence couldn't salvage the weaknesses in Ethan's approach. By the fourth session, the opposing counsel realized the tide was turning. They proposed a settlement, heavily in favor of my client. I watched as my father's face tightened with frustration, and Ethan avoided eye contact entirely, staring at the table like a chastised schoolboy. When the final agreement was signed, I remained composed. There would be no acknowledgement, no congratulations, no handshakes from them. And yet, for the first time in my life, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. I hadn't just won the case, I had proven, to myself above all, that I was capable, independent, and unstoppable. Later, back at Harper & Cole, Daniel clapped me on the shoulder with pride. "Well done, Ava. You were flawless. The client couldn't have asked for a better advocate." For the first time, I smiled, not for my family, but for me. I had finally taken control of my life, my career, and my destiny. The days following the settlement were a whirlwind. Word of my performance in court had spread quickly through the legal community. Colleagues at Harper & Cole congratulated me, clients were impressed, and even some rival firms took notice. For the first time, my accomplishments weren't being overshadowed by my family name. I was Ava Reynolds, a force to be reckoned with on my own. Yet, even amidst this professional triumph, the personal challenges lingered. My phone buzzed one evening with a call from my mother, Claire Reynolds. Her voice was tentative, almost hesitant. "Ava, can we talk?" I took a deep breath, bracing myself for what she might say. "Of course, Mom." "Where?" She suggested a quiet cafe near downtown. When I arrived, she was already there, fidgeting with her coffee cup, her posture tight. The years of submission and caution in her demeanor were still visible, but there was something different in her eyes, a flicker of respect, maybe even pride. "You were amazing," she said softly. I had no idea you would handle it the way you did." I forced a small smile, unsure whether to accept her praise. "Thanks, Mom. I did what I had to do." She looked down, twisting the napkin in her hands. "I've spent my life trying not to upset your father, trying to keep the peace. But Ava, seeing you out there, I finally understand. You're not just his daughter. You're you. Strong, capable, determined. And you don't need anyone to validate that, least of all him." Her words warmed me, but also stung. The acknowledgement I had longed for from my father was still absent. "I wish he could see that," I said quietly. Claire sighed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe one day he will. But right now, you've done what I could never do. You've stood on your own, and I am so proud of you for that." After our meeting, I returned to the firm, determined to channel my emotions into work. Daniel assigned me another challenging case, a corporate dispute involving multiple high-profile clients. I dove in, fueled by the taste of victory and the determination to solidify my reputation. Late nights became routine, and I thrived under the pressure. I wasn't doing this for my father, or even for recognition. I was doing this because I finally felt empowered, confident in my abilities. One evening, just as I was finishing up, my phone rang again. This time, it was my father. My heart skipped a beat. Victor Reynolds rarely called me directly. "Ava, I'd like to meet," he said, his voice measured, cautious. I agreed, though part of me hesitated. Could I really face him without letting old wounds resurface? The next morning, I arrived at Reynolds and Associates' offices, the lobby as imposing as ever. My father met me in his office, the space still filled with the familiar scent of leather and polished wood. "Ava," he began, standing as I entered, "I've been reflecting." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Watching you in court, handling the case against my firm. I was wrong. I underestimated you. And I want you to know, I see what you're capable of now." I remained silent, studying his expression. There was no smugness this time, no condescension. Just a man slowly realizing the magnitude of his error. "I want to make this right," he continued. "Reynolds and Associates, the firm you should have had a place in from the start. I want to offer you a partnership. Your terms. Your way." My chest tightened. This was what I had dreamed of, yet feared. Accepting men stepping back into a world where I had once been dismissed, where I had been overshadowed. But it also meant reclaiming a place I had earned, finally, on my own terms. I need time to think," I said carefully. "This isn't just about the title or the position. It's about trust, respect, and making sure my work means something here, not just because of my name." Victor nodded. "Take all the time you need. I won't rush you. Just know, I am proud of you, Ava. Truly." As I walked out of the office that day, I felt a mixture of emotions, cautious optimism, lingering resentment, but also hope. I had fought my own battles, claimed my victories, and now, finally, my family was beginning to see me for who I truly was. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding bridges, asserting authority in the firm, and navigating my relationship with my father and Ethan would be challenging. But for the first time, I felt the exhilarating freedom of choice, to decide my career, my life, and my legacy. Taking on my new role at Reynolds and Associates was both thrilling and terrifying. For years, I had dreamed of this moment, standing as a respected attorney, finally commanding my own authority. Yet now, walking through the firm's grand hallways with my new title in hand, I could feel every pair of eyes measuring me, questioning whether Ava Reynolds truly belonged. Ethan, of course, made his presence known immediately. Leaning casually against the reception desk the first morning I arrived, he gave me a lazy smirk. "Look at you, big shot. Don't trip over the carpet while running the place." I met his gaze coolly, my voice calm but firm. "I'll try not to, Ethan. But don't worry, I've handled far worse than your sarcasm before breakfast." He chuckled, but I could see the unease flicker in his eyes. Deep down, he knew this wasn't just a title. I had earned this, and he had been handed everything without effort. That realization alone made him cautious around me. My first challenge came faster than expected. A senior partner, Daniel Frost, a man known for his sharp mind and even sharper tongue, called me into his office. "Ava," he began, leaning back in his chair, "I hear congratulations are in order, but now comes the real test. Do you have what it takes to lead here?" I didn't flinch. "Daniel, I've handled cases that demanded precision, strategy, and endurance. I've earned my place here not because of my last name, but because I know how to win. I'm ready to contribute, not just as a lawyer, but as a leader." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded, a hint of respect in his eyes. "Good. Prove it." That very week, I was assigned to oversee a complex merger case involving a multinational corporation. The pressure was immense, the stakes high, and tensions between colleagues running hotter than ever. Some resented me stepping into a leadership position, assuming I was riding my family name to the top. Others, however, quietly observed, perhaps curious to see whether I was truly as capable as they'd heard. I quickly realized that commanding respect required more than competence. It required presence, decisiveness, and the ability to balance firmness with diplomacy. I held my first team meeting in the boardroom, my voice steady as I outlined strategy, assigned responsibilities, and addressed concerns. Every question, every hesitation, I met with clarity and confidence. Slowly, the room began to shift, from skepticism to cautious trust. Ethan, meanwhile, was testing boundaries. "So, Ava, you'll be making all the calls now," he said one afternoon, leaning over my shoulder as I reviewed contracts. "I hope you don't get too bossy." I smiled faintly, keeping my composure. "I hope you don't underestimate me. This firm isn't about being bossy. It's about getting results. And results are what I intend to deliver." That night, I stayed late, reviewing documents, preparing arguments, and strategizing. The office was quiet, the city lights casting shadows on the walls. For the first time, the weight of responsibility felt empowering rather than stifling. I was no longer just fighting for recognition, I was shaping the future of Reynolds and Associates, leaving my mark on a firm that had once doubted me. By the end of the week, my efforts had begun to show results. The merger negotiations were progressing smoothly, my team functioning cohesively, and even Ethan, begrudgingly, started acknowledging my skills. Yet, despite these wins, a part of me remained wary. I knew my father was watching, silently evaluating, weighing every move. Would he ever truly respect my capabilities, or would I always be his daughter, someone to be measured against a standard I could never fully satisfy? The answer didn't matter, not anymore. My focus was on the present, on proving to myself and to the firm that I was more than a title, more than a name. I was Ava Reynolds, attorney, strategist, and leader. And as I locked up my office that Friday evening, the city skyline glowing behind me, I felt a sense of ownership, pride, and determination I had never experienced before. This was just the beginning. Monday morning arrived with a tension that I could almost feel in the air. A rival firm, Whitman and Clark, had filed an aggressive lawsuit challenging our merger negotiations. The news hit the office like a thunderclap. My team looked to me for guidance, their eyes searching for reassurance. I straightened my shoulders, masking the surge of adrenaline I felt. "All right, everyone," I began, my voice firm, "this isn't just any case. Whitman and Clark are trying to derail our merger with every tactic in the book. They underestimated us, and now they're going to see exactly what Reynolds and Associates can do when we fight back." My assistant, Lena, handed me a stack of legal briefs. I flipped through the documents, scanning every point, every loophole, every potential vulnerability. I needed a strategy, not just a reactive plan, but a proactive one that would put us in control. Ethan, true to form, hovered near my office doorway. "So, the big boss is in crisis mode," he said with a smirk. "Need me to fetch coffee or something?" I didn't let him rile me. "Ethan, unless you've suddenly become a legal prodigy, your help here isn't necessary. But thanks for the offer." He raised an eyebrow, clearly unamused by my dismissal, and retreated, leaving me alone with the stack of briefs and the weight of responsibility pressing on my shoulders. By mid-morning, I called a meeting with my legal team. "This case isn't just about contracts and clauses," I explained, pacing slowly. "It's about anticipating their moves, staying 3 steps ahead, and being ready to respond before they even make a play. I want everyone on top of their assigned sections, and I expect updates hourly." Daniel Frost, ever the skeptic, nodded slowly. "You're serious about this, Ava?" Most new leads would crumble under this kind of pressure. I looked him in the eye, my tone unwavering. "Then most new leads aren't me. We don't crumble, we adapt, we execute, and we win. Understood. The day was a blur of strategy sessions, drafting responses, and reviewing evidence. Whitman and Clark threw every trick they could find at us: aggressive motions, attempts to discredit our credibility, even threats to leak information to the media. Each move was calculated to unnerve us, but I refused to show any hesitation. By the afternoon, I had arranged a surprise, a countermotion that would turn their strategy against them. "This is where we hit back," I told my team. "They think they can corner us. Let's remind them that underestimating Reynolds and Associates, and underestimating me, is a huge mistake." When we filed the countermotion, I felt a surge of satisfaction. The rival firm had underestimated my preparation, my insight, and my ability to lead. As the responses trickled in, I could see the cracks in their approach, the uncertainty that had never been there before. Ethan, unwilling to completely disengage, walked past my office later that day. "Looks like someone's enjoying themselves," he muttered, his tone half jealous, half resigned. I leaned back in my chair, confident. "Not enjoying it, Ethan. Controlling it. Big difference." Even with the external victories, the personal stakes lingered. My father had sent a cryptic message earlier that morning, requesting a meeting to discuss my progress. I hadn't responded yet. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to stay fully immersed in this new world where my capabilities spoke louder than my family name. Another part of me wondered if he had finally noticed, truly noticed, how far I had come. The day ended with a sense of cautious triumph. My team's cohesion had strengthened under pressure, the rival firm had been caught off guard, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of leadership, not as an inherited position, but as something I had earned with every late night, every calculated risk, and every decision I had made. That night, standing on my apartment balcony, the city lights stretching out before me, I allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. I had navigated the storm, taken control, and emerged stronger. Yet, deep down, I knew the next challenge would be even more personal, a confrontation I had been dreading with my father and the family I had left behind. For now, though, Ava Reynolds was unshakable. I had carved my place, proved my worth, and shown the world, and myself, what I was capable of.